Hello everyone, today we are going to learn about the spotting errors from the verbal ability section of CAT. Now there is a popular saying, the guest would find that mistake in a minute which the host will not in a year. And the key to solving questions of spotting errors is to look at these questions from the perspective of the guest. Now before we dive deep into this topic, we need to understand why we study this topic in the first place. See, questions from spotting errors are not directly asked in CAT, but topics of CAT, such as sentence correction, needs you to be well versed in spotting error questions in order to get the sentence correction right. Another important reason to study spotting errors is that in other exams such as NMAT, IIFT, and GMAT, questions from spotting errors are directly asked in the exams. As you can see here, 6, 4, and 3 questions respectively has been asked in NMAT, IIFT, and GMAT in 2021. So you can see spotting errors in itself is a very important topic. And now that we have understood why do we need to study this topic, let's dive deep into it. Now the questions in spotting errors are going to come from 3 types. It could be the singular plural, the pronouns, problems, or the verbs. To be very honest, spotting errors include all the grammatical problems that you can encounter. But these are one of the major ones that you can find in exams. Now let's look at each one of them separately to understand what type of questions we actually encounter. First, let's look at singular and plural. Now see, these type of questions are perhaps the easiest one of the bunch, but students still end up making the silliest mistakes in these questions and lose marks. And in order to solve these questions, first we need to understand our subject, if it's singular or plural. So if the subject is singular, we use the singular helping verbs, which are is, has, and was. And if the subject is plural, we use the plural helping verbs, which are, have, and were. Now we know that apple is singular, while apples is plural. So we say apple is a great fruit. And if we say apple, so we go like, there are apples in the fridge. As you can see what I did here, that when I said apple is a great fruit, when I use the singular form of apple, I use word is, which is a singular helping verb. And when I said apples, which is the plural form of apples, I said there are apples in the fridge. So I used are, which is the plural helping verb. Now let's look at some of the questions. But before we do that, let's understand that how the questions will be there in the first place when we talk about spotting errors. Now the question statement would be divided into 3 parts or 4 parts depending, and you have to find the part in which the error exists. And if there is no error, you have to choose the option which states no error. And see, in some type of questions, the statement will be divided into 4 parts, and the 5th will be the option no error. Now let's look at the general directions for spotting error questions. Read each sentence to find out whether there is any grammatical error in it. The error, if any, will be one part of the sentence and the letter of that part is the answer. And if there is no error, the answer is D. We have to ignore the errors of punctuations, if any. So as we have understood what will be the general directions for the spotting error questions, I think we should start solving them. First one we have here is, each of the boys were supposed to ride out in a different direction. Now as you can see that the statement is divided into 3 parts. The first part is each of the boys. The second is were supposed to ride. Third is out in a different. And the fourth option that we have is no error. Now our first job is to find what is the subject of this statement. Now in the first line we can see that boys and each both look pretty good for the potential subject. But the problem with this is, and most of the people do make this mistake, is that they choose boys as the subject and believe that the whole sentence should be in plural. But the thing is that boys is placed after the preposition of, and the subject is always going to be before the preposition. So in this case, each will be our subject and each is singular. So if it is singular, we need to understand that were here in the second statement is wrong because were is, as we just learned, is a plural helping verb. So instead of were, what statement should be used? Was. So the correct statement would be each of the boys was supposed to ride out in a different direction. So here our subject is each and our helping verb is was. Now let's look at the correct statement. As you can see, each of the boys was supposed to write out in a different direction is the correct statement, and our correct answer is option B. Now let's look at another question. But before I start solving it, I want all of you to pause this video for a minute and try to solve this on your own. I hope all of you have paused this and have actually gotten to the answer yourself. So I will tell you the answer and then we will start solving it. So the answer correct here is option B. And why? Let's get into it. So as we can see in this statement we have is Niharika and Muskan has played very well in the recent cricket tournament. Now as you can see, Niharika and Muskan are two people. So these are two singular nouns. But when they are joined by the word and, they will be treated as plural. So Niharika and Muskan have played very well in the recent cricket tournament. So instead of has, have will be there. Because why? Because we know that has is a singular helping verb, and we've already established that when two singular nouns are joined by the word and, they will be used as plural helping verb. So that is why we will have Niharika and Muskan have played very well in the recent cricket tournament. Therefore, the answer will be option B, and the correct statement would be Niharika and Muskan have played very well in the cricket tournament. Now, let's look at some of the words that are always singular. And people do make a lot of mistakes in this. And we need to understand that whenever these words come, we know what type of helping verb to use with them. So with the root word body, we have everybody, anybody, nobody, and somebody. With the root thing, we have everything, anything, nothing, and something. And with the root one, we have everyone, anyone, no one, and someone. So whenever you encounter these words, we need to understand that the singular helping verbs, which are is, has, and was, will be used instead of the plural ones. So if the plural ones are used, you know that those are the answers to our spotting errors questions. And you know what will be the correct sentence, because singular helping verbs will be used whenever these things are used. Like everybody, everything, everyone, anybody, and all of these words. Now let's look at the pronouns, the second part. A word that can function as a noun phrase used by itself and that refers either to the participants in the discourse or to someone or something mentioned elsewhere in the discourse. So this is basically the basic definition we have of pronoun. So we have the pronouns I, you, she, it, this, as you all might have understood by now. So the first type of pronoun that comes a lot in questions and people tend to make a lot of mistakes is one. Now what's the rule for one? The rule we have here is if the pronoun one is used, it must be maintained throughout the sentence. Must be maintained throughout the sentence is the important part here. Let's look at the examples to understand it better. So the example here we have is one must respect his elders. Now I think that this is a statement that all of you guys must have heard at one point in your life. This is like a very mundane statement. One must respect his elders, and everyone should respect their elders for sure. But here we go like that one must respect his elders is actually grammatically incorrect. Because as we just learned in the previous rule that one should be maintained throughout the sentence. And here one is not. So here instead of his, one's would be used to make the entire statement grammatically correct. Now let's look at the correct statement. One must respect one's elders. See, now this is a grammatically correct statement. Let's look at another example. One should complete his task on time. Now before again I start solving this, I want all of you to pause this video and try to solve this on your own. Use the same logic we used in the previous example and then try to solve this. This is a very easy one and I'm sure all of you will be able to get it immediately. I believe all of you have already got the answer with this one, so I will just start solving it once again for all of you guys. So one should complete his task on time, and the problem here once again is that one has not been maintained in the entire sentence. So once again, instead of his, one's should be used. So the correct statement would be one should complete one's task on time. Let's look at the correct statement. Yes, as we can see that one should complete one's task on time is the correct statement. Now let's look at another type of questions that we have in pronouns, and the things, it's the mistakes that students make a lot. It's the whose and which. So now the word whose is used for non-living things, and which is used for living people or ideas. This is very important to note. Whose is for the non-living things, while which is for living people or ideas. Let's look at the examples. The first example we have is which box is kept on the table. Now we know that box in itself is non-living. Now if the box in itself is non-living, then instead of which, what would be used? Whose. Because whose is used for non-living, while which is used for living people and ideas. So the correct statement here will be whose box is kept on the table. Now let's look at the correct statement. As we can see, whose box is kept on the table is the correct statement. Now let's look at another example. Which laptop is lying here? Now once again, I want you to pause this video and try to solve this question on your own. Just use the same logic we used in the last example, and I'm sure you will get this answer right immediately. I'm sure all of you must have paused this video by now already and have got the answer. So let's do it here once again. So again, laptop here is non-living. Now because the laptop here is non-living, instead of which, once again, whose will be used. So the correct statement will be whose laptop is lying here. Yes, as you can see that the correct statement is whose laptop is lying here. So now let's have a look at the third type of questions in pronouns. So like, unlike, and let. So the rule here is that a pronoun after like, unlike, and let takes an objective case. So before we actually start solving questions of like, unlike, and let, we need to understand that what is an objective case. Let's have a look at it. So see, there are two types of pronouns, the object pronouns and the subject pronouns. So the object pronouns are him, her, me, us, and them. And the subject pronouns are she, he, I, we, and they. And whenever we use the words like, unlike, and let, we use the object pronouns after them. We use the object pronouns and not the subject pronouns. So whenever you encounter a spotting error questions, and after the words like, unlike, and let, instead of the object pronouns, subject pronouns are used, you know what is your answer and what is your spotting error. Now let's start solving questions of like, unlike, and let. So the first question we have here is, you will never find a man like he. Now we know that the word like has been used here, and after like we can see that the word he, the pronoun he, has been used. Now he is a subject pronoun. As you can see here, he is a subject pronoun. So instead of he, an object pronoun needs to be there. So which one? So for he, in place of he, him will be used, which is an object pronoun. So this makes it an objective case, as we just read. So the correct statement will be, you will never find a man like him. Now let's look at the answer. As you can see, the correct statement is, you will never find a man like him. Now let's look at another example. Let I do it. Now I want all of you to pause this video right here and try to solve this on your own. It is very easy. Once again, use the same logic that we applied in the last example, and I'm sure you will get the answer. So just pause the video and try solving it on your own. Now I'm sure all of you must have actually got the answer already, because it's a very simple one. But let's still do it. So the question is that let I do it. Now once again, I here is a subject pronoun. And we know that after let, like, or unlike, subject pronouns are not used, and instead of them, object pronouns are used. And the object pronoun for I, instead of subject pronoun I, we would be using the word me. So the correct statement would be, let me do it. Now let's look at the answer. Yes, you can see the correct statement is, let me do it. Now let's look at the fourth type of questions, the superlative degree in the pronoun. Now the rule here is that the relative pronoun that is used instead of who or which after adjectives in the superlative degree. This means that after adjectives in the superlative degree only, instead of who or which, that is used. So let's start solving the questions of this particular type of thing so that we are able to understand better. Let's see. The first example that we have here is that this is the best which he could do. So now this is the best which he could do. Now we know that best here is a superlative form. It is a superlative form of good. So how they actually transfer? So we have good, then we have better, and then we have best. So best is the superlative form. And we know after best, which is a superlative form, which will not be used, and instead of which, that will be used. So the correct statement here will be that this is the best that he could do. Now let's look at the statement. As you can see, the correct statement is that this is the best that he could do. Now let's look at the third type of questions that we have, verb. Now let's understand what are verbs in the first place. So a word which is used to describe an action, state or occurrence and forming the main part of the predicate of a sentence such as hear, become, happen. So this is a general definition of verb which I'm pretty much sure that all of you would actually be familiar with it already. Let's start seeing the questions. The first we have is infinite verb. So if the verb indicates a purpose, an infinite must be used, and if the verb indicates a cause, a verb which functions as a noun must be used. Let's have a look at the examples to understand this particular thing better. The first example we have here is that he went to the mall for watching a movie. Now the statement is he went to the mall for watching a movie. Now we all know that there is a purpose for which he here, the subject, went for a movie. Went to the mall basically. So the person here went to the mall, and with the purpose here is for watching a movie. So now we know that there is a purpose initiated and there is a purpose for his action basically. So when that is the case, we need to use infinite verb. So for that, instead of for watching, we will say that there is a reason that they went. So that's clear. So we would say he went to the mall to watch a movie. Now let's look at the correct statement. As you can see, the correct statement is he went to the mall to watch a movie. The second is use of the word as. Now, as is not used with the verbs like appointed, elected, considered, called, but it is used with the word regard. We need to understand that as is not used with the verbs like appointed, elected, considered, and called. So whenever you see questions, because you see, whenever you start solving these questions, as will fit perfectly in the way we speak, So appointed as, elected as, considered as, called as. So all these fit properly in our mundane life conversations, but these are not grammatically correct and we need to understand this. So whenever as will never be used with appointed, elected, considered and called. But whenever we use the word regard, as will be used. Let's look at the example. She was elected as president of the college. Now you see, when we see on the surface, there is no problem with this particular statement. She was elected as president of the college. And you can say this statement and move on with your life, but it will not be grammatically correct. The grammatical correct statement would be when we remove the word as from here. The correct statement would be she was elected president of the college. Let's have a look at the correct statement. She was elected president of the college. So you see, this is the correct statement. And also we need to understand that if we use the statement like she is regarded, now we will say that if she is regarded as one of the smartest people in the room, here the use of word as will be correct. But if we say that she is appointed as the secretary of the university, now as will not be used. And the correct statement will be she is appointed secretary of the university. Now I believe that we have went to the end of this particular video, and I am sure that all of you must have understood a lot about spotting errors. And see, the topic is very vast, as the English grammar itself actually. And thus my advice is to check out the English grammar course we have of the VARC. on the VARC to enhance your grammar skills and score more marks in the spotting errors question. And we suggest you also to read the document Golden Rules of Spotting Errors right after this video in order to be even more thorough with the topic before we dive deep into the questions. So see you in the next video and where we take some more random examples and solve the questions together. Till then, have a happy learning with EduRev. Thank you so much.